Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast, live from Barcelona. Well, I'm in Barcelona. My two guests are not. This is Daniel here. Been a very exciting start of the year. We're recording this in beginning of February, and boy, I've been all over. I went to Vegas for CES, New York for NRF, where I ran into our illustrious guests, and I was just in the Emirates for Shop Talk Lux, and also recording some interviews with some leaders there in Dubai, which was a lot of fun, and you'll see them on the podcast very soon. But we're gonna go today to speak out one of the hottest topics in the industry, which is surprise, surprise, retail media. I think as far as like fades and fashions go, I think that this one has kind of transitioned from fad to staple, really, because it's like it could be a fad for 2 years, but when in year 3 or 4, it's not like it. This is here. So I think we have a very interesting panel here that somehow assembled itself. Maybe we'll tell the story, maybe we won't, because we have someone from the industry, which is Adam Smith, who's the head of retail media at Iceland. And at the other side, we have a commentator of retail media. Some may call her a pundit as well, or other adjectives, but it's the one and only, the famous Kiri Masters, which people will be surprised that she hasn't been on the podcast yet. So, hi guys, how are you?
Hi, great to be here.
I avoided using a word that that I weren't supposed to use.
I know people are just wondering what other adjectives do people describe Kiri Masters as. I don't know if I want to hear this.
Probably not. Well, we've heard a few. You've heard a few, and we've heard a few in NRF as well. But Adam, do you have any other adjectives apart from head of retail media at Iceland?
I mean, I'm quite sure there's many adjectives people call me here. Maybe I just don't hear them.
Maybe the Iceland guy.
Yeah, maybe. But no, look, thanks for having me. And the self-assembled podcast theme was simply that Kiri knows what she's talking about. So it should raise the overall quality of the.
Thanks, Adam, for making me look bad in front of all our audience and consumer goods and retail.
Of course, you know as well, Daniel, what you're talking about. Forgive me, please. Sorry.
So, guys, it would be great if you could give us a quick intro of who you are and maybe where you're coming from a little bit. Maybe Kiri, you can start.
Yeah, so I'm Kiri Masters. I have a podcast and newsletter called Retail Media Breakfast Club. If you enjoy this one, you might enjoy that. It's 10 minutes a day at 6 a.m. Eastern, Monday to Thursday. And I talk about the retail media industry, and increasingly with a focus on how does AI-enabled shopping affect the retail media industry. I personally have a view that agentic shopping poses a threat to the current state of retail media, and that we're due for a cosmic reset, let's say, some new ways of working for retailers and brands to be working together. And I can't wait to get Adam's perspective on that. Prior to this, I was on the agency side. I started a Amazon-focused marketing agency in 2015, and I sold it in 2022. So that's sort of where some of my interest and exposure to the retail media industry came from, is initially getting very deep with Amazon. And then towards the end of that time, Walmart, Instacart, some other retailers as well that had started to build up their media businesses. So that's me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how you fell into like really being like a reference in retail media, but there you go. Here's the story.
Yeah.
Adam, I have a question for you, because you're a head of retail media at Iceland, but your background, it's actually a very retail background, which is, you have some people in retail media like this, but it's pretty unique. How tell us a bit about your background and how you went from one to the other.
So I've been in trading for like 15 years, sort of in and around UK retail, my whole career. I think being being in trading, I guess, is the other side of retail media, I guess I would say. But nonetheless, we're still doing the same sort of thing. We're just trying to sell something else, you know? So we're still in shops, we're still dealing with the same suppliers that we would talk to in the old world, but also now a million other suppliers. We think of service providers that we talk to, non-endemic suppliers, et cetera, So I don't see it as being all that different, if I'm honest. It's just a different set of people, but the audience is the same. We're still trying to engage with customers and, impact their shop. So I think that the sort of trading background just helps me in terms of understanding how the business works. But it's been a very, very steep learning curve in terms of getting up to speed as quickly as possible in an industry that is changing almost daily.
Yeah, at least I guess that you have the advantage that you have is that somebody that was an expert a year ago may not be one now, no? So you kind of learn as things evolve.
So true. Can I ask Adam a question? Daniel, you're going to hate me by the end of this because I'm just going to be asking questions too.
That way I can relax a little bit and it doesn't all depend on me.
No, I'm just curious, Adam, at Iceland, who do you report up to? Because this is a big conversation about where retail media actually sits organizationally within retailers.
It's a great question because we've actually been talking about this today in that. So we sit in the trading function as a profit line in the overall trading income stream. So for me, for any network, that is absolutely critical. Anyone that sort of sits on the periphery that doesn't have a daily relationship with the trading team, it's really gonna struggle because I don't know I can't see how we would do it because the moment you become sidelined, those conversations become 10 times harder, and you're having the same conversations that the trading team will have on a day-to-day basis anyway. So you need to sit in that function. Now, the traders have got their own trading pots to get after. We've got our pot, we've got our budgets to hit as well. So if you're not aligned in that way, I really don't see how people make it work. Now, if you're someone like Tesco, for example, or JS with Nectar, that's you're into a different stratosphere of operation. But certainly for the networks that are either starting out or are sort of medium sized, you have to be completely integrated with that function.
I'm seeing sort of, I wouldn't call it a trend because we're talking about such a small number of companies and people, but there is a bit more interest in the US at least around aligning more with the merchant organization. And in some cases, the RMN leaders even report to the merchant. What do you think of that?
Which is Iceland's model, no?
Are we just calling it different things?
What's your language? Sorry, what's your language for merchant there, Kiri?
I think merchant is the same as trading.
Yeah, so buying. So it's the buying.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So
okay.
Trading would be.
Your pioneers, the people in the US are copying your model.
So yeah, it's the buying and selling function we sit with it.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure if you meant trading as in the trade marketing of the past. So anyways, it's good. This is actually such an interesting topic to talk about. What's happening in other markets outside of the US, because we're also kind of insulated and kind of stick to the status quo in our own markets.
Yeah, and let's talk about this because you're based in the US, Kiri, obviously. From your accent, you're not American, you're Australian. But you do look a lot at the US market. Adam, you're in the UK. What are right now the key differences between the retail media in one market and either side of the Atlantic?
Do you want me to have a crack at that?
You go first.
I think my experience is that it's just scale, isn't it, for the US? It's just hard. You've got print media in the US. It's just really, really difficult to do. So, with the rollout of digital in-store, it all becomes very, very possible very, very quickly. I think we're going through this sort of digital transformation in the UK is happening everywhere, just with slightly different setups. But there's loads of examples of it either being done. Actually, to be fair, there's more examples of it being done badly at the moment than there is of it being done well. But it's a real challenge how we face into it, because having connected products on the screen at exactly the right time, screens move, shops aren't completely fixed in place all the time. It is tough, but screens are going up everywhere. It is happening. We just the whole industry is just learning how to do it well.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic, because I just had, by the time this goes out, it would be posted to the my column at the Drum, talking about exactly this topic, about why there's some structural reasons why things work a little bit differently in the US. Do you want me to jump into them?
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, we will leave the link to the article in the show notes in case somebody wants to look at it. Also of your podcast, Kiri.
Thank
we'll
you.
only leave it if our audience promises they won't stop listening to this one to listen to yours. That's the only,
that would never
that's the only
happen.
thing I'll make them sign, but that's fine. No,
So
go ahead.
one of them is what Adam mentioned, which is the geographic density. So there is, the US is sort of a huge landmass, populated sort of differently, more of a sparse sparse population, broken out in many cities, and the physical sort of footprint of retail is strip malls, suburbs. It's not as compact as some other markets, and so that means that the store footprint looks different, and so the in-store retail media, I think, is an interesting aspect of that, because the deployment of screens are a bit more challenging given the sort of scope of it. So that's one area. Another is data regulation and GDPR specifically. That means that offsite retail media is much more of a thing in the US than it is outside, because we have like more lax privacy policies. So that is, for better or worse, that is much more of a thing. The scale and fragmentation are very different. Amazon and Walmart collectively own 85% of the US retail media spending. The fourth one is e-commerce penetration created more of a focus and interest in sponsored product ads and on-site. And then finally, there's this really interesting law in the US called the Robinson-Patman Act. Have you heard of this, Adam?
I have not.
Okay, it's pretty arcane.
I could say the name rings a bell, but I don't think that's much value. This is a really arcane law that hasn't really been litigated very much. And so companies have their own interpretation of how this works. And it's essentially that brands need to use their trade dollars in ways that don't favor one retailer over another, right? And so that means there's more of a separation between trade marketing budgets and retail media budgets, and the ways that brands, especially the big, publicly traded CPG conglomerates and the like, they're very careful about where the budgets go as well. So those are 5 structural reasons, I think, why the US operates a little bit differently to other markets. I'm curious to hear from you guys if you can think of more in addition to that.
How did that come about, that act?
Oh, I have no idea.
Seems very precise, doesn't it?
I think it's it's something that's been around for a long time. Again, it hasn't really. It's pretty open to interpretation, and so it means it's kind of implemented differently between different brands.
Gotcha.
But Kiri, let me go a bit more into this point, because you said brands need to use trade dollars in ways that don't favor a retailer versus another. Is
Mhm.
that what? So how can then brands? Does that mean that brands need to spend their trade marketing dollars where they're actually selling the brand? And that means
Yes.
that if they want to do overspend on retail media, they need to allocate marketing dollars.
Yes. Yeah. So and particularly for, a publicly traded company, all of these expenses are in their P&L, and they need to be transparent about what that is. So it is difficult to move money out of, between different retailers, perhaps. And, I think also just the origin of what we call trade marketing, what we call shopper marketing, this is maybe a little bit different. I understand that perhaps it's in the UK, you can correct me, Adam, but even the setup of in-store displays is funded differently. In the US, it's actually the brand that's responsible to come in and set up and manage those displays rather than the retailer. Is that something that you're familiar with?
It's a bit of both, and a brand might come in. Are you physical displays or digital?
Physical.
Physical, they're mostly shop led. It's certainly in larger stores where there's opportunity to do some bigger off shelf activity. A brand might come in and support, but in most cases, brands have some field teams, but 95% of cases are all retail led. So yeah, I mean, it would be great if they would come in and help us and do that for free. But no, it's unless there's a massive sort of opportunity to display something off shelf, those teams just aren't out there doing that.
And I have another question regarding what you said about offsite retail media, which you can do more with it in the US because in the Europe you have GDPR. Like, does that mean like you can do like more like retargeting of people because
Yes.
you have more information? Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I get from what you're saying, like the US has the benefit of scale and a bit more relaxed legislation when it comes to like targeting people. But then from what Adam said, and you kind of pointed to as well, if you're gonna do like in store, it's harder to roll out, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I find some comparisons between the shape of retail media in different markets, like how much is spent on in-store versus on-site and et cetera. I find those comparisons can be a little bit crude because there are all these reasons why retail media has evolved the way that it has in the US. It's because there's more e-com penetration. It's because like these other sort of formats of retail media are easier to set up, and in-store has typically been a little harder because of very real geographical constraints. So I find it interesting to dig into these differences because I don't think I think it gets positioned sometimes as, oh, the US is behind on in-store, and I don't think that is it's not that people had no idea that that existed or whatever. It's just a function of like but it was a different evolution of retail media here.
It's quite interesting when you consider the amount of advertising that's everywhere else,
Mm,
just not in the
mm,
shops themselves. And it's
mm.
actually quite stark. The amount of there just isn't that much in your face points out in any of the shops that I was in when I was across. And when you consider that you step out of the shop and there's just advertising,
Oh, it's everywhere.
it's just
Yes. Did you put a
yeah,
post on LinkedIn about that?
sorry,
Did you post on LinkedIn about that?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Someone did then.
Yeah.
Someone must have.
People are always beefing about in-store retail media on
Oh,
LinkedIn. I don't
I
understand
know.
it.
It's like this is what I was saying about the examples of. There's all sorts of examples just popping up all over the place now. What people sort of want to like tear it down almost a little bit. Where it's I think just in my mind it's always been there. It's now just being talked about a lot more, and
Mm.
it's just got so much more focus than it's ever had.
And
People,
Yeah, I think that might be in part because, this is we're at a point, Daniel, you said that retail media's been a fad and fashionable but now it's a real thing. I I know exactly what you mean. Like now is the crunch time. A lot of the budgets that brands had available that could be moved over to retail media have already moved over to retail media. And so I think part of this obsession with in-store retail media is that it is a future growth channel. It could tap into brand budgets rather than performance budgets. It is, it does offer something else. And my personal view, not everyone agrees with me, but like in an AI enabled shopping world where we're using ChatGPT to decide on what we want to buy and all of that, in store is resilient to that as well. So I think it is exciting, but I can't say I completely understand why people get so hot and heated over the definition and the fact this has been around forever. Why are we talking about this? It's like, wow, this really sort of ignited something.
I find it funny how sometimes I see people being very like adamant or like
Passionate.
very passionate about saying, oh, retail media has been there forever, and then some people say retail media is new. So I'm a bit, as somebody that's not an expert,
Yes.
I get confused.
Yes.
We've been advertising food forever. It's not,
Yeah.
it just depends on where it is.
Yep.
So to say it's not been there is, people have
just yesterday I read someone.
People have been promoting their wares.
But just the other day I read somebody saying, oh, retail media has only been here for 5 years. Anyway, what about Agentic? Like, well, probably for our audience, I'll define Agentic. It's basically that some AI entity participates in the shopping process. Now that can be the consumer looking for products with a ChatGPT or one of these, or it can also be you name it, like the retailer setting up how they show up with agents and so on and so forth, and then you have the iterations of agents speaking to agents and so on. Complete me if there's some point I didn't cover, which is very likely.
Kiri.
Yeah.
That's what you think.
I think you covered it.
Fill the gaps. No, but Kiri, I know that you have an opinion on how Agentic will affect retail media. And I think it's one that some people will not want to hear as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, that I think that most retail media networks need to take this very, very seriously. There are some retailers where it is about convenience, for example, in store. So, we'll get Adam's perspective in a little bit. But there are some retailers where it is going to be less of a concern. But here's my thesis. Even before we talk about a bot buying stuff for you autonomously, ordering your groceries and, checking out for you and all of that. Even if we're talking about the present day situation where a very large number of people are increasingly using third-party AI answer engines to explore potential purchases, validate their purchases, give me options here. Like that, personally, I rely on ChatGPT and Gemini so much now just to decide A or B, or like, what am I not thinking about this? Or like, here's my criteria for this item I want to buy. What should I consider? What do people have to say about it? Then I go to a retailer.com to make the transaction. At that point, I know exactly what SKU I want to buy. I'm not browsing. I'm not clicking. I'm not searching keywords. I'm not browsing category pages. I know the exact SKU that I want and I'm in and out. So that kind of that mission changes the shape of on-site retail media because I'm not clicking around and looking and comparing. I'm not in any mood to be influenced by like, hey, a conquesting campaign from another brand looking to get that sale. It also means there's less of these search and browse signals that I'm giving a retailer that they can use in their offsite media capability. So they're not seeing, oh, Kiri looked at this brand and then that brand and then she bought that brand.
Yeah.
So like maybe, the brand she didn't buy, maybe you should try retargeting them in 3 months when she's ready to replenish or something like that. This is the essential kind of data that retailers are using for offsite and for on-site audience building as well. So those two revenue streams, which at least in the US is the vast, vast, vast majority of retail media ad spend, isn't all going to go away tomorrow. I'm not saying that, but it is at risk because these signals are dropping, and there is less time that kind of AI-informed consumer is going to be spending on a retailer.com.
Yeah, it's interesting. How do you have any info of like how many people have that behavioral pattern when buying stuff from a supermarket? Because like I'm like the opposite. Like I like to go into the store, but I'm also like live in a city that's high rise. That's kind of designed to walk around and to go into the store. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I will say, so a couple of data points here. One is that the percentage of traffic going to a retailer.com from ChatGPT alone has doubled. I can't find my doc here with the stats here, but it went from, I believe it was 7% in 2024 to 16% in 2025. So retailers are already seeing a lot more traffic coming in from there. And then there was a really cool stat that I got from a Costa Group, which is they do a lot of shopper marketing, but they also have a commerce media practice as well. They found amongst their shopper panel that 18% of shoppers shopping in store over Thanksgiving weekend, Black Friday, etc., pulled up a LLM like ChatGPT or Gemini to consult with while they were doing their in-person deal hunting on Black Friday and Thanksgiving. And an additional 30-something% actually pulled up and looked at a retailer assistant like Rufus and Sparky while they were in the store. So this is, this behavior is shifting pretty quick from my seat.
How do you see it, Adam, as somebody who has like a vested interest?
Well, what's the phrase? Like the human shopper becomes the algorithm, isn't it? I think that I am in no means an expert, but I'm not. Look, we are the model, right? Iceland is 20% online. That will fluctuate between 20 and 25%. 75% of the sales of our business still come through the shop. So, on anywhere between 75 and 80%. So our opportunity still is in store.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, all those budgets that have been, historically used for product boosts or how, they're just going to have to be repositioned, aren't they? The tech is going to have to catch up with, will we get to a point where Agentic is negotiating deals from a retailer's platform, which then drives that choice? There's many different ways that money needs to be spent in a way that will tie into, a shopper using ChatGPT or whatever, because they're still gonna want to find the deal, aren't they? And if the brand's got the money to spend, it's the tech that will then support their search on that platform. It's really interesting. I mean, it's just going to change everything. Certainly, I had no idea, Kiri, it was that many. Like 20% is a big number.
I guess that it also depends on like the type of. It's different, like to shop in a Walmart than to shop in an Iceland or to shop in most of the supermarkets here in Barcelona, right? Because here it's like groceries, like food, household, blah, blah, blah. and in Walmart or Black Friday, it's much more like durables, right? So there's also that element. And then out of curiosity, like, since we have a lot of brands listening to us, what do you think is like, why do normally brands decide to invest in Iceland retail media?
Why now or why in the future?
Let's tell us both.
Look, everyone's got an audience, right? And everyone needs an audience. So, we've got quite a specific shopper, incredibly loyal customer base. We still get 9 million transactions a week. So you're reaching a lot of people when you're working with us. I think that the future for us is really, really interesting. We've just agreed a deal with Stratacash to roll out like 6,000 digital screens in our shops, combined with Walkbase, their tracking data, their tracking system. So we'll have fully measured in-store retail media we'll be in 600 shops by the end of we'll be at the end of this calendar year. So we're in a really, really exciting position in terms of what we can actually offer and actually detail real return on investment data from the shop floor. So, it's a really exciting time for us, and we're just really excited to get as many screens and tracking equipment set up as quick as possible. It will be the leading data set in the UK market by the end of this year. So it's an amazing position to be in. And everyone is doing their own version of tracking. I think Co-op are using Lumen. So everyone's doing their own thing. But so for the case studies that we've seen, the quality of the data that we'll be able to provide back is really, really impressive. And there's when we've been working with the Walkbase team, there's just so many other benefits that come with it. Like we've got a better understanding of footfall in all of our shops. We can understand sort of hot and cold spots in the shops as well. And there's now so much information we never had coming flowing back into us that right now we don't really know what we're going to do with all of it. But it's a really exciting time.
No, but I think that for brands, it's like really getting close to like closing that loop. No, like, okay, if I put my product here, I sell more, or people look at it more. Or what?
Yeah, look, we did. We've got this famous. We call it our mustard slide, which is like we just picked a product that it was a brand that just it was an EDLP product that we were running in the summer. We had some lovely creative that was like barbecue focused, and we were just able to demonstrate that great creative, right time, right product. Increased category share, increased overall sales versus our sort of control. So it's a lovely little case study which sort of formed the foundation of the agreement that we've reached. But that is the detail that we'll be able to share moving forward. But yeah, no, it's going to be a busy year.
Yeah. What about the retail media in the bottom of the funnel, top of the funnel debate? Because the reality is, and I think it has a case for both. But don't you find that a lot of times when people talk about like retail media success, they always talk in campaigns that success, the final line is always like, oh, and we sold X% more.
Yeah, I mean, look, we need the sales, don't we? I mean, look, certainly my experience over the past, look, I've been doing this. I've been working with brands for 15 years. That the understanding where their money is going and what it's being used on is the expectations are higher than ever. Every brand wants to know what they're getting back for their investment, and we see every conversation is going in that direction more and more and more. So if we can offer, the best insight, we've got the best chance of securing budgets. That is where every single conversation is going. So, that's what everyone's trying to face into, aren't they?
Yeah. Interesting. How do you see it, Kiri?
Yeah, I think that, look, there is there's some commentators out there like Andrew Tyndall. Do you guys know Andrew Tyndall in the UK? And super smart, super in favor of amazing creative in advertising, and I completely agree that great creative that moves people, gets them to think differently, etc., is amazing work. My question is, how do you then get that beautiful creative that will change people's minds and move them in front of people who actually care? So I think that retail media is a very efficient way to get in front of the audience that you want to. There is some great metrics available. I think that in the maturity stage that we're in, you're absolutely right, Adam, that this is what brands have come to expect, and they have it from their other channels, and they have their CFOs kind of breathing over their neck like, hey, why are we spending over here when this channel over here is producing a better ROAS? It's a constant sort of battle within brands about the area of marketing and branding can be a little bit more gut feel, but because we have this extensive menu of performance metrics that brands get to see on their dashboards, it's very attractive to start managing all of your ad spend according to these metrics, which there's nothing that's untrue about them, but it might point people in a direction of trying to optimize on performance for every last dollar simply because that metric is available, when we know that, over time, TV ads have performed really well. Ads on Netflix perform really well, and those don't have really legible performance data either. So I don't know if I'm kind of going around in circles here, but I feel like all of the metrics that have been produced because brands say that they want them has, in a way, hampered retail media. It's very ironic because that's what brands say that they want. They're asking retailers like Iceland for this metric and that metric, and is this, MRC certified and all of this kind of stuff. And that creates maybe some incentives that are a little bit perverse.
Yeah. Why, speaking of brands, why when we go to retail media events, there's like such a small percentage of CPG brands, FMC. It's the FMCG guys. I should say FMCG.
Sorry, yes, FMCG.
No, you can say CPG. It's allowed. Don't worry.
Sorry.
I come to terms with it.
Sorry, I'm not even American and I'm saying it that way.
No,
my Australian,
I did it as well.
My Australian roots
exactly.
should get me to say FMCG. This is super interesting. I have been before the call we were talking about like ethical dilemmas in retail media, and so I actually went and did some digging on this because I found that question quite interesting. And this is one of the things that come up, that there is, with these events in this industry, but it is by no means limited just to retail media. It happens in every sort of enterprise scale industry and in other areas of advertising, obviously, as well, where there's these kind of junkets that retailers and brands get sort of given to attend this fancy event in the Caribbean or Cannes or wherever it is. So there's some sort of hospitality privileges that get extended as a means of influence. So that's one thing that's interesting. And question about like the vendors in that space is that you need to win new business, obviously, but that's a huge cost that you may not be investing into the actual capabilities of your technology, let's say. And then the other is that I've heard from anonymous sources is that you're right, brands are often not a huge component of attendance at some of these events. I actually put on my newsletter back in when I was recapping the Cannes experience last year, which is my first time at Cannes. And I was like, where are all the brands? This is such an echo chamber. There's ad tech for retailers, and there's retailers, and there's very few brands here, at least the ones that were in the retail media sort of part of the event. So it's an echo chamber. Retailers are talking, the vendors are talking to the retailers, the management consultants are talking to the retailers. No one's actually really getting the perspective of the brand at some of these big events where big sort of decisions around partnerships and growth targets are being made.
Yeah.
What do you think, Adam?
At my candid
What do you think, Daniel?
at my candid commerce event, we have both brands and retailers. But what do you think, Adam, as a retailer? Go ahead. I'll tell you my theory in a minute.
On the brands being at these events?
Yeah, like why, like at retail media events, there's not that many brands.
Well, I mean, most of the retail media events I've been to have been tech providers trying to flog their latest bit of technology the brand
Right.
simply doesn't want to buy. So, the other thing is, certainly in the UK, there's a lot of, we've got like a grocery code of practice over here, which means that we have people are quite careful about what events they go to, and we have to just around not having too much fun at stuff. So you tend to get a bit less attendance through that. But yeah, I think, look, my experience of these events is I can't believe how many events there are in this industry, to be honest. I sort of, based on sort of being in New York, and then it seemed very much like the population that were in Atlanta or were in Vegas all seemed to be at the one in New York. I was like, is everyone just saying the same? Is everyone just saying the same thing to each other at the next event? But it's no, look, it's an interesting question, and certainly we take back. So in my role, we take back our offer and present that to brands.
Mm-hmm.
So my job is almost that, if you're with me. So we're building the offer, which we then take and sell on ourselves, because we're all trying to build up our own network and make it the most attractive in the market. So I guess that's what we're here to do, isn't it?
I think that there's a bit, it's a bit what you were saying. You both kind of pointed to it, to the type of sponsors that every event has. And I think it's an interesting one where maybe retailers have to maybe get together more and create an environment where there's a dialogue between retailers and brands, because in retailers are very used to like being in having the leverage of being the ones that buy. But now that they're in a selling position, I think they have to be proactive about it. So if any
I
retailers
completely agree.
If any retailers listening to this year, get in touch with me. I'll help you establish a dialogue, a table of dialogue and negotiation, which will be a lot of
Well,
fun.
who is going to pay for the lunch though, Daniel?
That is such an interesting question.
We'll get a tech vendor for retail and a vendor for
That's how it starts.
There we go.
That's how it starts. And it's a slippery slope. And suddenly you're like, these lunches are really profitable. What if we had another sponsor?
If it works, it has to be paid, right? So there you go. Another
Do you
one.
have a budget for that, Adam? Do you have a budget to go out for dinner, lunches with other retailers?
Certainly not other retailers. But,
but this is okay. Look, also guilty. I have a podcast and a newsletter. It is my job. I'm a publisher essentially. Who pays me? Tech vendors for like sponsorships. So of course you want to go to an event, you want to learn about best practices and what's happening. You want to go to some panels and hope they're not too boring. And at the end of the day, it is we're in the advertising business, right? And so this is advertising, funding this collaboration in the industry right now. I think if you take it for what it is, it's just like using Google or Facebook, and you're like, okay, if it's free, I am the product. If this event is free, I am being sold to. So I don't know. There is a
Do not give too much of our multi-million-dollar ideas away. Let's talk about it offline, because I think there's some.
oh, okay. Oh, you got some multi-million ideas.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. What is the dynamic, partly from own ignorance, between like in a retail media setting between like brands and private label? Private label, also known as white label, own label.
We have this conversation daily here. So if you consider, we would regard Iceland Own Label brand as our number one brand in our offer. But it is a challenge for own label manufacturers to boost their own, to support their own products. So we have to do that. So we have to find the balance between branded income and making sure that we maintain the customer offer and the breadth of choice, and not just becoming brand land. It is a tightrope that we have to walk every single day. We're going through it at the moment with, we launched citrus ads through Publicis this year, and we're finding our feet with that now. It's like, we obviously we want brands to get involved and boost their products and advertise on the website, but we still have to maintain balance and control of the overall customer offer. But equally, to your point earlier about CFOs, Kiri, we're all under pressure, aren't we, to do what we can? So it is a really interesting dilemma, Daniel, because we can't expect, when we obviously the structure of an own label relationship versus a branded relationship is totally different. So we can't expect our own label suppliers to do both, to offer us great prices and then invest as well. So we have to do it for them. But yeah, look, it's a very, very challenging issue that we have to manage very carefully.
I'm curious to know, Adam, because like you've been in the role for a year.
Mm-hmm.
What's been like the number one, like the biggest learning that you've had in this role? Because like, again, going from buying to retail media, there's transferable skills, but it's a different. Well, you tell me.
I think the biggest challenge is, I say this at like a couple of the events I was at earlier this year, is like the biggest challenge is the internal challenge. Like, you're talking to brands, want to spend money, they want to invest, they want to understand what they're getting back for their money. That is a similar conversation, just for something different with the branding, whether you're buying it or you're in food, you're in media work. The challenges for it, like getting set up, is just all the internal ones you've got to have. You've just got to make sure your stakeholder management is, everyone knows what's going on. You're talking to every single corner of the business every day almost. We're rolling out screens. We're talking to the guys who to manage all of the shop floors. We deal with marketing every day, and we're putting them under massive pressure all the time because we're running more media than ever. We work with the e-commerce team daily, and we're putting them under pressure. It's just, we have to be very careful that we're not the sort of the bee's nest that just irritates everybody in the business. It's like it's a really challenging, daily challenging conversation to try to keep everyone happy and trying to keep this brain on the tracks. I think that's been the hardest bit for me, is just that energy that you really want to put into selling media. You actually spend 80% of your time just keeping the thing just keeping the thing going. Look, and I think the other thing which has been a real pleasure is just all the people in the industry are actually all very pleasant. So that's been quite good.
Yeah, I think that's the fun of like the retail.
As we say, me being like a hairy house buyer, it's a nice change to engage with a different set of people, and it's certainly not like the sleepy corner of the retail trade, is it? It's just absolutely booming. And we just have to make sure it doesn't become annoying. I mean, you say retail media, and you can feel like 50% of the room like roll their eyes, can't you? So it's It's interesting, isn't it?
I thought that was just me.
Not the two most
Oh,
hated
great.
words.
Retail
You're
media.
not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. Listen, guys. I know we had a few other topics to cover, which I'm sad that we can't cover them, but I'm also happy that then I'll have an excuse to bring maybe both of you, at least one of you, back to the show to cover them.
Ooh, who will it be?
I think that, Daniel, just to cover off, we were going to talk about the ethics just quickly. I do think it's a really
Yeah.
interesting conversation because I won't name. There's been something that's just blowing up over here. It's gone absolutely wild. There's a quite a famous influencer who helps people start businesses over here, and it was in a shop, and it was an advert for a vape, and it went absolutely crazy. Like, they've had to make a statement around, making people make the wrong decisions at point of purchase, et cetera, et cetera. And there's going to be more of that because we're going to be dealing with service providers and companies that have never been in the retail environment before. Certainly, in grocery, that will now start to feature when we start running digital ads in stores and stuff. And it's going to these conversations are going to happen all the time. We're going to have opportunities to run ads with businesses that we have to just think very carefully about. Is it brand damaging or not? And does it align with the total business philosophy? But it's really interesting time because I'm being totally straightforward. I would have run that.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
You wouldn't have thought of like
it's
the
no, I wouldn't. We would have done the same. It's that it's a learning for the entire trade. People are watching us. You have to be really careful.
yeah. I think you have to be like aware of like what country you're in, what society you're in, and who your specific consumer is, right? Because we've seen, especially like consumer brands doing like influencer-led campaigns that have not aligned. Maybe they thought it was very on trend and culturally relevant, but it didn't align with their current customer
I think
base.
it's just really interesting. If you're not willing to promote it, should you be selling it? That's it's just
sometimes selling goes more under the radar than promoting it.
I think that's a really interesting tension because you're talking about, look, that's not just the reputation of the brand that ran the ad, it's also the reputation of the retailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was not about the brand. This was about the retailer making the choice to run the ad, which, as I say, look, it's, it's like, do you take the money? It's like, just you have to make that decision all the time, and there's going to be those conversations are going to be happening more and more. You just have to, you just got to keep the retailer identity at the forefront of your mind all the time, just to make sure that you can't be the one that's damaging the overall retailer brand. It's a interesting time.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the thing about like, ethics, I think it just deserves like proper.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
No, it's fine, it's fine. No, I'm just saying that it's a super interesting topic that we talked about in preparing this. But yeah, I think that if I won't choose actually, Kiri, I'll be very open to either of you or both of you coming back to the show to talk about more. This has been fantastic. A quick one, since I ask all the guests on the show, I'll ask you guys as well. If you had to go back to yourselves as you were starting your career and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
Kiri?
Oh gosh, it's such a good question. I would tell myself to really focus on building trust in the industry, and that's something that I feel has been a real bright spot for me in my career, and so just encourage myself to lean into that.
Adam?
I would say start your pension as early as possible would be the first thing. And I think it's like Barack Obama said, like, take work off your boss, make your boss's life easier. You will not go far wrong doing that, I think.
And if your boss doesn't let you take work off them, they're probably not a very good leader. If I can add to that,
I'm exceptionally happy when people take work off me. Trust me.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been amazing. Like we've talked about so many things, but like we talked about like the difference between the US and Europe in terms of like, well, you, Kiri, put on some very good points. We talked about offsite, fragmentation, which is another topic that we have to go into more.
Mm.
The Robinson-Patman law or act,
Yeah.
is that the name?
Mhm.
How retailers need to take um, agentic very seriously. I think that's interesting as well. Like, how will agentic affect the retailers' power? No, because if like they're the middleman and they can risk not to be there, well, or to be more less relevant and have less power. Another interesting topic to talk about more. We
Mm.
talked about Iceland's how it's mainly in store, but online is important as well, and why it's interesting to consumers. First of all, we have 9 million transactions a week. And on the other hand, they've just started working with StrataCache and Workbase to roll out screens and analytics in store, which I think you mentioned will be the largest rollout in the UK. So very exciting. And another reason to have you back, Adam, in a year to ask you how that went. Um, what else? Yeah, I liked what you said, Kiri, about great creative that moves people and gets to get them to think differently. But how the hell do you get creative in front of people that actually care? So that was a very interesting one. We also talked about brand versus private label and a few other things that were a lot of fun. So guys, I had high expectations, but this was a lot of fun. So thanks so much for joining.
Lovely.
Thank
Great
you for having
to-
us.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. And thanks to our audience for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys every Wednesday and every Saturday. Have a great one. Bye.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from Dwyer Partners SL, doing business as the FMCG Guys, or the individual author, host, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Dwyer Partners SL. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Dwyer Partners SL expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we presented in this podcast.